Hey guys, this is Jessica from Core Creations. I'm coming to you today um, to talk about royal icing consistency as a beginner. A lot of tutorials out there, show you how to get to their consistency, but they don't really talk to you about it from an app, and show you from an application standpoint, when you would use the consistency and, what happens if you make a mistake with the consistency, how you can resurrect it. Royal icing is a very forgiving icing. If you've thinned it too much, you can fix it. If you've hardened it, you can fix it. So it's not something that's unsalvageable, and I'm all about saving time and money and effort. So, a lot of practice and patience, but hopefully with my tutorial, it'll get you started in the right direction and give you a lot of tips and tricks on how to start. So I hope this helps, and let's get started. I'm gonna lay down. Down here. There we go. So, store my royal icing in a container similar to this, covering it with saran wrap. With icing, you don't want it to come into contact with air. It'll harden frosting. So cover it with saran wrap, and then the top of the layer, you do want it at room temperature when you're using it. So I've taken a spoonful of what's referred to as the glue consistency, which is how it comes out of the stand mixer, or when you're first making it. Most recipes will bring it to the glue consistency, which is great if you want to glue together a gingerbread house or otherwise, but that's really it. So you just want to add just a smidgen of water. Spray bottle is a great way to control your water. You can always add more. So what you're looking for is for the icing to create and keep a form peak. So that is exactly what we're looking for, is a firm peak on the spoon and a firm peak, because as you can imagine, with the stiff consistency, you want it to be able to keep its shape, and keeping its shape is, piping any kind of details like basket or flower, leaf, really anything in that regard. So I already have a piping bag ready to go with some stiff consistency to show you how it's applied. And I went ahead and got a little creative and did two-tone, thought it'd be fun. So we're going to do a rose. And what you want to do is on what's referred to as a rose nail, create a little blob. Don't know what else to call it other than a blob. I'm actually gonna build this one up a little bit more. because you really want, you know, when you think about it in terms of you want something for to give your body of the rose. And this is petal tip, and you'll see that it's got a wide and a narrow end. So you want the wide end towards the bottom, the narrow end towards the top. We're going to go ahead and form the bud of the rose. There we go. So we're going to form the bud. And always keep in mind, keep your piping tip clean. It'll generate the best results. And then just going to come in and create the petals. And then if you want the petals to come out further, just tilt at more of an angle like this, so you can open up the petals. And I love the two-toned effect, which is why I decided to do it. And the blob at the bottom, you know, when you're cutting it off the nail, it gives you a little bit of extra without affecting cutting the rose. So again, you want to come across, form that wide petal. We'll do a couple more quickly. There we go. Full rose. And there you have it. Nice. And then what we will do is, now that we have our rose, now, unfortunately, and I can talk more about dyeing royal icing in a later video. There's actually something interesting that I use to achieve a more leafy green, which not a lot of people know about, because I find a lot of the food coloring greens are really more darker. It's more of the Kelly green and lighter. It really isn't a true leafy green. So I actually use an entirely different product to create that leafy green. But right here we have a leaf tip, and it looks kind of like the open mouth of a fish. And what I learned was you actually use this sideways versus like this. And so normally you wouldn't add leaves to the, but we are going to take and add some leaves using our stiff icing. That's what I really love about this tip, is you can make it, you know, apply pressure. You can make it as wide and as short as you want. You know, make it short. Make it really wide and let go. So you can really control. Let's see if we want it thinner. So you can really do a lot with this particular flower tip, or excuse me, leaf tip. But here it is on the ground. And you can even see how it allows you to lift it, create a little bit more of a three-dimensional. I mean, that's what you're looking for as far as your stiff consistency is going, is to really create that shape, those shapes. So that's our stiff, and then we're gonna add a little bit more royal icing to get what's called our outline. This is where you would look to write, and what you're looking for is a peak that bends. So it's going to be a softer peak, because this is the consistency you're going to use to write, to create your outlines. I used a lot more outlining in the beginning to contain my flood. I still do on second layers. So what you're looking for is to kind of create, I think of it as like a little wave, like a little riptide. See how the wave bends, but it's more giving. So this is what I would consider a great outlining, and as you can tell, you know, we didn't add hardly any additional water to get to this consistency. Because again, you know, you think about it, writing and still needs to be able to maintain its shape. You don't even need a piping. So what I've done is gone ahead and again filled a piping bag with, and you always again want to make sure you have a clean tip. So, and then with writing, treat it like a piece of string. So you don't necessarily, you know, want to touch the surface, except when you begin, apply pressure and end, string. But if it's flowing, easily workable, keeping its shape, subscribe, yes. If it's keeping its shape, it should start to harden pretty quickly, you know, but it's easy to work with, not as hard as the stiff consistency, but you don't see any, you know, drainage or otherwise. Keeping its shape, easy to work with. You know, if you get any kind of peaks, You can work it down with either a paintbrush or your scribe tool. Again, very palette malleable, so you can work those peaks down and readjust it. And you're going to be working on a dry surface, so say you mess up part of your outline, you can take your scribe tool and remove it all together. That's another good thing about the outlining, is it can be easily removed and corrected. Oh, one other thing to note, you know, if you're stenciling a cookie, the stiff consistency is the one you'd want to use the stencil, provided, you know, not everybody can afford an airbrush on their stencil or for their stencils or otherwise, so that wasn't going to be part of the video, but let me go ahead and demonstrate for you using, and it doesn't, you know, have to, there's no rhyme or, you know, picture a cookie up underneath here. You know, just get it covered. And you'd want to make sure if you were using a layer and you want to go in with your offset spatula and just go to town. Just make sure your bottom layer, if you iced it, and this isn't directly on the cookie itself because then it wouldn't matter, is well dried. They suggest, you know, 8 hours, 7 to 8 hours is the perfect amount of drying time for the flood of the cookie layer. So then you would just gently remove your stencil, and there you have it. So you'd want to also use and the cool thing is you can get creative with different colors, create the ombre effect, anything you wanted to do. And I'll actually be posting a video later applying the stencil effect to cookies that I will be making. So that's another use for the stiff consistency icing, which again takes very little effort to get to. So we've addressed the stiff, the outline, and then there's also the medium, 15 and then 20 second. So let's get to the flood. So right now we're gonna add another spray full. As far as the medium consistency, what you're looking for is the consistency that it drops back into the bowl like honey. And medium consistency or 15-second consistency is what you'd use to cover smaller areas, create dimension where you want it perhaps to be more puffy than flat. Because as you can imagine, flood is, as it sounds, it's gonna, you know, even out, flatten. So the little slightly thicker is, you know, gonna maintain shapes in smaller areas, but still provide enough liquidity to really flood the area. So we're still a little too thick here. So I'm gonna add more water. And again, you know, there's no exact science. You'll get used to it as you know, just, you can always add more water. So take it slowly as you know, start to use royal icing. So see how it's, you know, dropping back in to the bowl in a honey like fashion, but it's still somewhat keeping its shape. So that's what you would call medium consistency for coverage of smaller areas that you may need to manipulate. But we are actually going to straight to the flood consistency. And there's a couple tests to know you've gotten there. And that's if you bang it 3 times, it's flat. Or if you draw a line, it takes 15 to 20 seconds to get back to being flat. This isn't quite there, maybe just a smidgen more water. All right, I think we're there. So it goes back into itself. It's flat. And then, so we were there. I'm adding a little bit more water to show you what happens if we've gone a little too far and made a mistake. Always add a little powdered sugar to thicken it back up. And again, a little at a time. So we happen to have this cookie over here. That we're going to apply our flood to. And find my, all right. I love these bottles by Sugar Bell, actually, for my flood. I don't know why I just did that. They open up a lot bigger. And I'm also going to show you another mistake that's about to happen, where there was a vestige of some dried icing that just, so it could potentially clog our icing tip. And I'll show you how to overcome that. Okay, so the one thing I like about the Sugar Bell is you can actually change piping tips, so you can really use whatever piping tip you want in the bottle. So that's kind of cool, I thought. And I didn't even buy it realizing it. So we're gonna outline with our flood. And the reason it's called, 15 to 20 second consistency is that's the amount of time it should take to go back into itself, like become entirely flat. And there's no rhyme or reason on applying it to the cookie, just however you see fit. Whatever tickles your fancy, strokes your different strokes for different folks, tickles your pickle. Motion in the ocean. Just want to make sure it's even. No craterings happening. I'm going to create those perfect all right. And then you can go in with your scribe tool or a toothpick, fix any air bubbles. Fix any unevenness. And your icing. Make sure it's straight. Just give it good. Shake, shake, shake. Get all the air bubbles out. And there we have it. Our flood. For our cookie. Coming to you next, we're going to do a tutorial on drying times, expediting them using several different dehydrators. Can take your drying time from 8 hours to 15 minutes. And techniques on which, again, all about time and money savings and which models work great, and look forward to it. So that's actually gonna be one of our control cookies that we just did, and I look forward to it. And until next time, hope you enjoyed. Hit the like and subscribe button.